Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in again. As always, I am Kaylee Batesman, the content director at SheCanCode, and in today's episode we're discussing how to know if a bootcamp is right for you. Coding bootcamps can be an excellent choice for many students, but they are highly intensive programs that may not be right for everyone. I'm joined by the incredible Holly Boothroyd, software engineer at Microsoft today, who we're also lucky enough to have as an elite member of SheCanCode's blog squad. And today she will be sharing her own story and revealing some of the key factors to consider when determining if a bootcamp is right for you. So welcome, Holly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. As I mentioned, you are a member of our blog squad and you are very popular in our community. So this is going to be a popular podcast with our ladies. And I'm so pleased that you got to join us today. And we have a lot to talk about. So we're going to kick off, if it's okay. Can you start with a bit of background about yourself to set the scene, please?
Yeah, so I mean, we can go. I'll start high level and then dive in a little deeper. So I am a Microsoft software engineer too, working out of London. So I work on things like File Explorer, Edge, and just generally bringing intelligence to Windows and Edge. So it's quite a big remit. It means I get to work on lots of cool different projects and ship to like 1 billion people. So it's quite a lot of pressure. Outside of my day job, though, I am also the founder of Her Hello World, a platform where I try to help get, women and generally just underrepresented people into technology careers and, thrive in their careers once they get there. So, things like Instagram, TikTok, my own website, all sorts of different stuff. And one of those ways is working with SheCanCode, which I absolutely love doing and writing blogs for. But in terms of how I actually got into this field, I started with a C++ games programming camp in high school. It was with a local university. It was pretty intense. I don't necessarily recommend C++ as a starting language, but I really loved games. And so this is why I took this camp, but ultimately it set me on the right path. I then followed up with some classes in high school doing Java and web development before finally deciding to commit to studying computer science with business at university. So that's when I finally made the move over from Seattle to England. And that's basically where I've been since. Otherwise, I did, as part of my degree, a placement year at Microsoft, and that's how I got my start at Microsoft. I did a year-long internship working on Paid 3D, 3-month internship working on Xbox back in Seattle, and then was offered my grad role here on the team that I'm working on now. And so I've been working on Search Assistant Intelligence ever since.
Amazing. And you took quite a traditional route in. You knew what you wanted to do. Was that something you just knew from a young age? You seem to have a path that was very clear. I mean, even though you wouldn't recommend it, you went off and did C++, but you kind of knew. Did somebody encourage you in that area?
Yeah, I think my journey was definitely a lot more A to B than what I see a lot of people doing, especially now in this industry. I think I definitely benefited from the fact that a lot of people don't actually realize this is that Seattle is quite a big tech hub. Microsoft is based there, Amazon is based there. We also have a million other big companies that lots of people have heard about, but don't really realize they're either from Seattle. So I was kind of always surrounded by technology. But that isn't to say that I was still one of only like 1 or 2 girls in the classroom. So there's still that element of, a bit of imposter syndrome, wondering, is this really the right path for me? And I'll admit, after that games programming camp where it was C++ and it was quite intense, and I was in a room with basically all boys, not many people spend 6 weeks, learning to do games programming over the summer. I did question myself a little bit at that point, being like, is this really what I want to do? But thankfully, I gave it another shot in high school doing the Java classes instead, which was a much nicer to learn as a first-time programmer, and had an incredible teacher who was just like the most supportive person in the world. And kind of really encouraged me that, this is something that you can do, and, kind of go out and do it. So I'm really glad that I did. And ultimately it became a lot easier and a lot more fun as you keep learning. So
yes. And I think as well, that's, as you said, as you kept going, you found what worked for you in terms of I want to learn and this works for you. And that's part of our conversation today, because I think when people think, oh, I'll go into technology and I'll, start, I will pick a boot camp and I'll go down the area of, finding a boot camp. They can be very expensive. They can be quite intensive. Are they actually worth it for some people? When you get started, though, what do you think some of the key factors to consider in determining if a boot camp is right for you or not right for you?
Yeah, this is a really great question, because exactly as you point out, boot camps are pretty expensive. And so it's a real consideration that you have to make, and make sure that it's going to be right for you. And it is the right boot camp as well. I think there's a lot of boot camps out there, and the quality of them definitely varies. And so when I think about choosing the right boot camp, I guess it's a mix of two things. It needs to be a good quality boot camp, but it needs to be a good quality boot camp for you. And so when I look at boot camps overall, in terms of their quality, I think about, do you want like this kind of extra, like, more support, more guided learning, having a teacher there, having a lesson plan. A lot of people don't really know where to start or where to go to find that kind of learning pathway. So boot camps are really good at giving you kind of that extra support and motivation and accountability to get you through that initial process, especially because the learning curve is steep. And so having somebody to kind of help you through those first initial stages while you're learning to learn and learning where to go to learn this information, that can definitely be really helpful. I think something to be mindful of when you're choosing a boot camp is really like understanding what it is that they teach, because these boot camps are only a few months long. Sometimes they're even a couple weeks. You don't get a whole lot of breadth in your education. And so you need to understand what their focus areas, and does that actually align with what you want to learn in the industry? Because every part of the industry tends to have, a language or a tech stack that works best for it. And so if you want to optimize your learning and optimize your entry into the industry, you should try to find a boot camp that is teaching you the tech stack that aligns with where you want to go. And so that does require a bit of introspection and a bit of research to understand what part of the business that you actually want to enter, and whether or not that actually aligns with it. And the last thing I always tell people to look out for with boot camps is try to find one with industry connections. It's the biggest thing that I find makes it successful for people who have done the learning, have some of the skills now, but actually getting that first job. The people I've seen that have been really successful going through boot camps is where the boot camp actually has a partnership with somebody in industry, with a company that, gives you at least an interview at the end, or mentorship with somebody at that company. So you have that bit of a tie and those kind of career connections to make that transition from boot camp to the workplace much, much easier.
Yes, that's great advice, because as you said, boot camps can be very expensive. And if you get to the end and you feel like, I still don't know if this is even for me, and there's still no other options at the other end, that could be a complete waste of time and money. And especially, we speak to a lot of returners, and that's quite a gamble as well. If you're you've been a full-time mum, or you've been caring for somebody, and then you're kind of weighing up, should I take a boot camp and try and get back into tech? And that's quite a gamble for people that have other responsibilities, as to whether or not it's right for them, and you still don't get a job or have that connection at the end. So yeah, that's great advice for those though who are thinking, if they decide a boot camp isn't for them, what are some other good alternatives to learning and training, do you think?
I think my favorite one at the moment are apprenticeship schemes. I think they're really cool, and they're definitely increasing in popularity. And so they're also increasing in kind of availability of what is actually out there in the industry. But a lot of the good ones that I see, so there's different levels. I'm not an expert on all of the different levels, but a lot of the ones that I see are these like degree apprenticeships. So you go to work part of the time of the week, and you also then study part of the week. So by the end of your, I think it's like 4 or 5 years, you've been getting paid for all of your work. So that's 4 or 5 years worth of work experience. You have a degree, which you've not had to pay for. So now don't have all of this debt. you have all of this like great work experience, a network, and you're probably going to get a job offer at the end of it. I'd be incredibly surprised if you did not get a full-time job offer at the end. And it's a great way to start getting into these big companies that maybe are traditionally seen as quite hard to get into, like Microsoft, Google, these all have apprenticeship schemes. So for people who are kind of thinking about where to go, that's definitely an option that I'm emphasizing to people more as, a good way to get in, especially with like lower financial barriers too.
Yeah.
You can talk a little bit more about the specifics of that, but generally the fact that at least you're getting paid and don't have to go into debt to get your degree is a benefit.
And you're in the world of work. I mean, you're streets ahead of students. We've all had that feeling when you leave university and you think, oh my word, I was not prepared for a workplace, let alone having the qualifications.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they're a really good option. There's definitely, I think, like not going to uni is a group that talks a lot about apprenticeship schemes. I think the government's even sponsoring a lot of different apprenticeship schemes. So they're on the rise, absolutely. So I'd look into those. But the other options really are university, like I did. So that's a very traditional path. The industry understands that there's lots of support. If you go down that path, definitely do a placement year, or at least like get some work experience as well. It helps immensely when you try to get to the end of your degree, right? And then you don't hopefully have to interview, like I didn't have to interview because I already had the job. And then I guess the other option is self-teaching, which requires a lot of discipline. I think that's really the big thing. It's a lot of discipline, but it's entirely achievable. There's loads of free resources out there that'll teach you all the basics that you'll probably learn at a boot camp anyway. You just have to, really guide yourself through that process quite a lot more.
Yes. Yeah, that's quite difficult. And even online learning is hard enough, let alone, I always prefer to be in a classroom with somebody there, especially if you're not quite sure if it's for you and that person can kind of encourage you through. But yeah, if you're doing just self-learning, it can be incredibly tough.
I'm always really inspired by those who do it. I have to say, I'm like, you must be much smarter than I am, much more dedicated.
Yeah, I'm finding the drive to sit down and to learn and to do it. And it's a great habit to get in as well, because a lot of people in tech, not just women, they say once you're in, you're constantly learning. So if that's something you're doing from yourself from the start, then that's a really good habit to get into.
Absolutely.
When people, especially on our live webinars, I must say, some of the questions we get asked, they are asked about languages and where to start. Do you have any tips on, where beginners can get started to test the water? You mentioned a little bit about doing your research and knowing where you want to work in the business, but if you're really new, where would you get started? Not C++, I take it.
Yeah, what's funny about C++ is I actually do it all the time for my job, so I've conquered that hill finally. but so I think the easiest answer to give is there's probably 3 languages that you'll end up starting with. It's probably going to be, C#, JavaScript, or Python. Those are the ones that I see a lot of people doing. So if you want quick, short answer, probably one of those is a safe bet. Again, though, I do encourage people to do a bit more research, because, you could learn one and you'll end up having to learn another language at some point anyway, but it'll save you a lot of time trying to get into the job that you want by learning the skill that is relevant for the part of the industry that you want to go into.
Yeah.
So again, do your research. Just go check out the job descriptions for the companies that you want to work for, or research the people on LinkedIn, see what skills they have. That'll start to really quickly build out an idea of what languages, tech stacks, even professional skills that they're utilizing as well. But in terms of, great, I have an idea of what language I want to learn, what tech stack, what do I do now? A couple good online platforms that I've used before is like Free Codecamp. YouTube has a lot of free stuff on there, EDX. Microsoft Learn has a whole bunch of learning pathways that are really tied towards specific jobs, and there's free training there, and that kind of starts to build out a bit of a roadmap. And the other one that I've started to come across more now is this. It's actually a GitHub page, but they have a website but backing it. It's called roadmaps.sh. really cool interactive website that basically breaks things down into like, do you want to learn front end, back end, this language, blah, blah, blah. And has this map effectively of like all the things that you can learn related to that subject. And then you can like click on it and there's resources. So it's done a lot of the work and the thinking for you. So if you're not really too sure what to do now that you have a language in mind, I would check out that website. So you can kind of get a bit more of a fine-grained detail look on what you should actually be learning next.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great advice. I think if you get started, you might feel that, you go through a couple of courses and then you realize, actually, I've learned a few things that are just not useful to me. they're not going to be useful to me. This was a complete waste of my time. And you won't continue through that process of, continue learning and moving forward to getting that job. So I think it is important to start with something that, as you said, you can move forward and actually use within the types of businesses that you would like to work at. And that also leads into, picking the right bootcamp or training course that translates into real world work and projects. And how about that? Because as we said there, it's quite important about what training courses you pick. And it's, I suppose, you mentioned a little bit about, ensuring having a boot camp that is related, has good connections into the world of work. That can really help. But I suppose if you're sitting there in your training course thinking, I'm not learning anything that I actually think this is what I would be doing in a business, this is what I would be doing when I get into work, that again would just seem like a complete waste of time, wouldn't it? You wouldn't feel like you wanted to stay in that area.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one because, to your point, I mean, you need to be learning these practical skills. And this is why, working on projects, getting work experience, I do find that's where you end up learning the most. So I learned a lot in my degree, but I definitely think I learned the most during my internship and my placement years and actually doing the job. And so it's a bit of an interesting one. Again, it goes back to kind of doing your research. What do you actually want to do? Trying to build projects. So I think projects are a really good way of demonstrating and that you can put all the pieces together that you've been learning into something functional and useful. And if you can make it tie to the place that you want to go into an industry, that's a really nice way of standing out with that employer. So it's a bit of a balance. Again, I would make sure that the boot camp that you're choosing actually teaches you the things that you need to be learning. But generally, these boot camps teach quite a lot of foundational information, and maybe they get into some depth in the later weeks and months, but you can't really go too wrong. I think it's kind of up to you to make sure that they do a lot of projects and make sure that, you're kind of supplementing that with maybe additional projects related to where you end up actually wanting to go in industry. And there's a lot of different, ways in which you can connect with industry to find out more about what they're doing or to build projects outside of that, like hackathons.
Do you have community groups as well that you work with? Are there any sort of, whether they're female groups or, industry wide, that you tap into on different projects and, not just now you're working, that, that's kind of, is that how you got started?
Yeah, so I've been involved with a couple different community groups based in the UK that I love. So I'll give them a little bit of a shout out. So like the STEMettes, they have a really good mentorship program and they work a lot with different industries and do good kind of discovery days almost with them. I definitely take a look at them. They're kind of a bit more targeted towards I guess under 25s, I think is kind of their focus, but there's lots going on there. So I definitely take a look at them. Code First Girls is another one that I really like. They do a lot of coding classes of all different kind of lengths and kind of subject matter as well. They also have lots of industry connections as well. All of their coding classes are completely free, so that's great. And I don't think they have as many age restrictions. I would need to double check, but I think they're kind of a bit more open. Maybe it's more students and recent grads and potentially career switchers as well. So I need to double check, but they have a lot of good things. We Are the City is also just a big network in London, or across the UK, should I say. They do lots of different events as well. They have also award ceremonies that you should nominate yourself for, so you can get some more industry recognition and opportunities and all sorts of good stuff like that. But in terms of a community, I definitely want to highlight in terms of if you want to do more hackathons or technical things, Major League Hacking is a global hackathon group. They run all sorts of different events and partner with all sorts of different hackathon groups. So you'll see a lot of them partner with student societies and universities, but they do other things as well. So I'd encourage you, if you want to do a bit more programming, meet some more people, build up those skills to actually like make your skills applicable, even explore your business skills and entrepreneurship skills, kind of formulating the actual idea that goes in behind your hack project, then that's a good place to kind of look up and see if they have events near you.
Yes, I love that. I love all of the groups that you just mentioned. And also, you're talking about hackathons. That it's just a brilliant way to network with other people that are building similar projects or work on something and feel like you achieved something for the day. We ran hackathons at SheCanCode, and we were so surprised that the ladies that attended our last hackathon, they'd never attended a hackathon. And there were lots of fresh ladies there that just wanted to come for the day, connect with people and work on a project. And we loved that. We're like, this is absolutely fantastic that they felt confident enough to come and meet with the community, because you're absolutely right. Just being able to learning how to work with other people, work as a team, achieve something, and learning how to use those languages in, real world scenarios makes such a difference than just learning something within a boot camp and thinking, well, I know how to do it, but I've never actually applied it to any project. It makes such a difference. We're almost out of time, and I've got one last question for you. Is there anything that you wish someone would have told you about tech before you joined? Any advice that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think a piece of advice is to realize that you don't have to know everything.
Yes.
I no one's expecting you to know everything either. When I first started in the industry, I had a huge wave of imposter syndrome. I was working in a company that I had only dreamed of working in, and with people who had made games that I played growing up. It was just a crazy time, and I wanted to be just as good as they were. Kind of forgetting that they've been working in this industry for 10, 15 years. They had made a million mistakes that had taught them all of these things that I was, also making the same mistakes and learning from. And so that I feel like that kind of mindset isolated me a bit. I didn't want to show that I didn't know anything. And so, would secretly ask questions to like one person. And then I started realizing though that, the fastest way to learn is by asking questions, by leveraging the experiences of others. Why bother going through the same pain that somebody had to do already when you could just learn from their experience and just do it much faster?
Yeah. And even if you fail, I always think fail fast and just move on. It's fine. But not all companies encourage that as well. So, if you're lucky enough to get in a company that encourages you to learn and move forward, even when you fail, and celebrates when you do well as well. I mean, that's why you stay. That's why you stayed,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, making mistakes is, I think, the fastest way to learn. If everything goes right the first time you make a program, I mean, what have you learned there? You're going to end up, if you make a mistake, you have to figure out why it broke. How do you fix it? You start learning the depths and the intricacies of these different things that give you that knowledge. And so making mistakes is actually a great thing. So I think it's just a little bit of confidence, a little bit of an understanding that it's okay to not know everything. We are all constantly learning. I finished my 3-4 year degree, and by the time I left, I still needed to learn the latest things because the industry had changed just even in those 3 or 4 years. I still learn every single day at my work. And so it is just you get comfortable with not knowing. It's just all about being able to learn, having confidence in your ability to learn, and that will carry you through just like the rest of your career.
Yeah. And you just said learning at work there. Is that also important? It's not just, for our listeners thinking, I'll kick off my career, I'll start a coding bootcamp and there I go. How important is that as well, once you're in the world of work, that you get in a company that encourages you to, take time out and continue learning within your working day? I mean, surely, it's not like you get in after university and that's it and you stop learning. It really makes a difference which company you join, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky because I don't even think this is necessarily Microsoft wide. Granted, Microsoft does really support learning through all sorts of stuff. Like we have hackathons, company-wide hackathons that we just get the week off to learn, innovate, build something cool, right? But my team also has dedicated learning and innovation time each week. So we have like a half day each week to just go learn some stuff. And it's really helpful because at the end of the day, again, the industry is changing all the time. There's always something new to learn. There's always something, that you could build subject matter expertise to bring it onto the team, and which you can then share with the rest of the team. So teams that encourage learning are really going to be the ones that stay on the forefront of what's happening in the industry and are building up team members that can provide value for many years. I think you'll end up becoming stagnant quite quickly if you don't keep learning, and just by simply taking on tasks that are somewhere outside of your area of expertise is a really good way of just learning on the job. And write down your steps and share it with somebody else, and now you've made twice as much impact.
Yeah, that is a lovely point to end it on, because we are already out of time. Holly, thank you so much. It has flown by, and it has been a pleasure having you on, because our ladies absolutely love you as part of our community anyway, so it's absolutely lovely to have you on the podcast as well. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun. I love talking about these things.
You're back, Holly, so that is good to hear. But to everybody listening, as always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.